Imagine standing at the edge of your life, only to realize everything you believed in was a lie, and the person you trusted the most had been hiding a secret world from you all along. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today, we are diving into a story of love, betrayal, and rediscovering self-worth. Before we start, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to share this story with someone who loves intense life stories. The rain tapped gently against the windows as I sat alone in the living room, gripping a warm cup of tea with fingers slightly numb from the chilly autumn air. My name is Emma, and for 40 years I have been Robert's wife and Daniel's mother. Every corner of our life had been a series of sacrifices, my career put aside, friendships limited, and every single decision revolving around the family. Robert always said, "I'll take care of you. You don't need to work," and like a fool, I believed it was love, a love expressed through quiet sacrifice and endless devotion. Daniel, our only child, was now nearing his early 30s, though I could still remember him as a small boy, peeking out from behind his homework, asking questions with curiosity and innocence. Robert was always busy, caught in the endless cycle of office meetings, calls, and corporate responsibilities. And I managed the house, the schedules, the finances, the appointments, every mundane detail that kept our lives functioning. Our home was immaculate, every corner shined, every meal carefully prepared, and every bill meticulously paid. I did all this without complaint, believing that one day Robert would truly see me, would understand the value of my life's work, and acknowledge the quiet devotion that had built the foundation of our family. Yet there were moments, small flashes, that left me uneasy. A lingering look Robert would give, an absent-minded smile at a colleague, hints of attention paid to someone else. There was Linda Mallister, his assistant at the firm, always near him at corporate events, always smiling, always composed, always somehow part of a world I didn't belong to. At the time, I dismissed her as just another competent employee. I never imagined the role she would eventually play in our lives. I remember one particularly rainy afternoon when we sat in the backyard with our tea. The wind whipped the trees, and the sky was a heavy grey. Robert was silent, and so was I. Yet, in that silence, I felt something, a small tremor, a fleeting unease, as if life itself had shifted under my feet and I hadn't noticed. I wondered then if I had been too blind, too obedient, too accommodating. My strength, my patience, my unyielding dedication, were they virtues, or had they merely blinded me to the truth unfolding quietly around me? We had built a life together, one that seemed solid, like a house weathered by storms but still standing. But beneath the surface, cracks had formed. Moments I once thought were normal, a lingering glance, a hushed laugh across the office, were pieces of a puzzle I would soon be forced to assemble. And I had no idea how painful the full picture would be. In our house, every object told a story: the worn armchair where Robert would read the morning paper, the kitchen counter where I prepared meals late into the night, the small dining table where Daniel and I would laugh over his childhood stories. Each object carried memories, responsibilities, quiet sacrifices. And yet, the world I had constructed, the home I had devoted decades to, might not even be mine anymore in the way I had believed. I would soon realize that life is unpredictable, that loyalty and love do not always guarantee recognition, and that the identity I had so firmly rooted in my family's life was about to be tested in ways I could never have imagined. But for now, I sat quietly observing, sipping my tea, unaware that the calm of this ordinary day was the last before everything I knew would unravel. Every smile I had worn, every meal I had served, every night I had stayed up tending to a sick child or worrying over bills, it all seemed insignificant now, as if it had been performed on a stage. with invisible spectators. And I hadn't noticed that behind the curtains, a different story was quietly being written, one that would shake the very foundations of my life. Robert and I had lived together for decades. I believed in our routine, our shared life, the sacrifices we both made, or so I thought. Our house, our home, our very existence was defined by the roles we played: the provider, the nurturer, the obedient wife, the devoted mother. But life has a way of revealing truths that no one can anticipate, and I was about to face a revelation that would redefine everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. And as I stared out the window at the rain, I felt a shiver of uncertainty, a subtle premonition that the world as I knew it was about to change. Little did I know that in the coming days I would not only confront hidden betrayals, but also embark on a journey to reclaim my identity, my dignity, and my self-worth, one that would demand every ounce of courage I possessed. The morning of the funeral was cold and grey, a sombre reflection of my mood. I wore Robert's favourite charcoal grey coat, the one he always liked when I wore it to family gatherings. My fingers trembled slightly as I adjusted it around my shoulders, trying to keep my composure. The chapel was filled with friends, colleagues, and neighbours, all whispering condolences, all offering smiles that felt hollow and distant. Daniel, our son, stood at the podium, poised and steady as always. He looked sharp in his dark suit, but his face carried the weight of loss. I tried to smile at him, but the effort felt mechanical, like a mask I had worn so many times before. He cleared his throat and began reading his tribute to his father, each word deliberate, each pause calculated to convey respect and love. Then came the moment that changed everything. Daniel's voice faltered slightly, a tremor betraying the deep emotion he felt. And he said something that made my heart stop. "There's someone I want to give a special thank you to." The room went silent. My heart raced. My mind screamed, "Is he going to say my name?" I clenched my handbag tightly, white knuckles pressing against the leather. For 40 years, I had sacrificed, loved, cared, and endured every hardship for this family. Surely now, my son would recognize it, but no. The next words pierced me like a blade. Someone who supported my father through the toughest time of his life, Miss Linda Mallister. A soft murmur swept through the chapel. I froze, unable to breathe. Linda, his assistant, the woman I had dismissed so many times in the past, stood in the front row. Her emerald green coat gleamed even under the muted light of the chapel. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, and a serene smile that made my blood boil. She had positioned herself so seamlessly into the world we built together that I hadn't even noticed the space she was carving out until now. Daniel walked down from the podium and embraced her. His words, gentle and sincere, solidified my worst fears. "You're the one who was truly family," he whispered. I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath me. Every glance, every gesture, every silent observation I had ignored now converged into a single, painful truth: my life, my sacrifices. My years of devotion had been invisible to the person I thought mattered most. I sat off to the side, unnoticed, watching as the woman who had gradually become a part of my husband's world took center stage. The funeral, meant to honor Robert, had become the unveiling of a hidden family I had never known existed. And in that moment, I realized that my role, the one I had cherished and believed defined me, had been replaced. The lawyer's words later that day confirmed the reality. Robert had left everything to Linda. Not a single dime for me. Every property, every account, every asset her inheritance. My son, my only child, stood beside her with admiration and pride. And I was left in the shadows, a silent observer of a life I no longer recognized. That evening, back at home, I walked through the empty halls, touching objects that once held warmth and memories. The armchair in the living room, where Robert always read the morning paper, was empty. The dining table, where Daniel and I had shared countless meals and conversations, stood cold and silent. I opened the fridge, still stocked with Robert's favorite beer, the trivial details of his habits mocking me. I realized then that life had moved on without me. Every sacrifice, every quiet act of love, every unacknowledged contribution had been rendered meaningless by the choices he made, and by the allegiance my own son now showed to the woman I had once ignored. As I sat in the dark living room, the rain pattering softly against the windows, I understood something profound. I had been invisible not because I had failed, but because the life I thought I shared was never fully mine. It belonged to another plan, another secret, carefully crafted behind closed doors for years. And for the first time, I allowed myself to grieve not just for Robert, but for the world I had believed in, the life I had sacrificed for, and the son I thought would always see me first. The following morning, the sun barely peeked through the clouds as I drove to the law firm that Robert had chosen years ago. The office smelled faintly of aged wood and ink, a somber reminder of the formal world Robert had always inhabited. The lead lawyer, a man in his early 50s with a calm, deliberate voice, greeted me with a serious nod. Ms. Emma, he began, we will proceed with the reading of Mr. Robert Smith's will. Every word felt heavy, each syllable a hammer striking the fragile framework of my life. As he read through the legal documents, my heart sank deeper with every sentence. The majority of Robert's assets, our main residence, vacation homes, and personal accounts were left entirely to Linda Mallister. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Not a single penny was left for me, the wife of 40 years, the mother of his child. And my son, Daniel, had already aligned himself with her, calling her family. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to demand justice, but instead, I stood frozen, silent, overwhelmed by the enormity of betrayal. At home later, I sifted through decades of memories, trying to find evidence that I had not been imagining at all. Old ledgers, photographs, receipts, and business documents filled my hands. Then, in a drawer marked Robert, I discovered a folder with letters, payments, and property records in Linda's name. My hands shook as I traced each transaction, properties purchased, accounts funded, gifts unaccounted for. Over the past decade, Robert had quietly built a life for her life that had erased mine. I realized then that Linda was never an accident in our story. She had been carefully placed, slowly integrated into the fabric of our lives, while I remained blind to the growing web of deception. The realization cut through me with sharp clarity. I had been deliberately removed from the narrative of my own life. I contacted Ruth Lanier, a longtime friend and former colleague, explaining everything I had uncovered. She was shocked but immediately agreed to help. Together, we began the painstaking task of compiling evidence, corporate transactions, property purchases, financial anomalies, all pointing toward a deliberate scheme orchestrated over many years. Weeks passed in a blur of investigation and preparation. Each day, I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down, but I also felt a flicker of determination. This was no longer just about grief, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and the truth. Linda Mallister would not continue to erase me, and I would not let my son believe that loyalty to deception was loyalty at all. As I presented the evidence to Michelle Robinson, a sharp and experienced corporate lawyer, she nodded in understanding. "We will pursue this," she said. "Every document, every transaction, every proof you have, this will be a case of justice through law." And so began the battle of fight, not only for restitution, but for recognition, for the life I had built, for the family I thought I knew. Each court date, each legal maneuver became a testament to my resilience. I spoke truth to power, revealing the years of covert betrayal, the systematic transfer of wealth, and the manipulation that had left me invisible in my own life. Throughout the process, Daniel remained distant, confused, and often defensive. He could not yet reconcile the father he idolized with the man who had built a secret life for another woman. But slowly, as the evidence mounted and the truth became undeniable, cracks began to appear in his understanding of loyalty, love, and family. It was in those quiet moments sitting late at night in my study, reviewing documents, tracing each step of Robert's secret life that I began to reclaim my identity. I was no longer simply a widow, a mother, or the quiet caretaker of a family. I was Emma, a woman who had endured, who had fought, and who would not allow herself to be erased. And as the first court hearings approached, I felt something I had not felt in decades: hope. Hope not for revenge, but for justice, for clarity, and for the reclaiming of a life that had been denied to me for far too long. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, leather, and tension. I sat in the front row, my hands folded, my heart pounding. Linda Mallister entered the room with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed her victory for years. Her smile was calm, controlled, as if nothing could touch her. Beside her, Daniel's expression was conflicted loyalty warring with the emerging truth. The judge, a composed woman in her mid-60s with a keen eye for detail, called the session to order. Michelle Robinson, my lawyer, began presenting our case. She laid out a decade of evidence meticulously: financial records, property transfers, and communications showing Linda's systematic acquisition of wealth through Robert's resources. As the courtroom absorbed every detail, I felt a surge of validation. This wasn't just about money, it was about exposing deception, reclaiming dignity, and asserting the life I had lived with honesty and sacrifice. Linda's lawyer attempted to dismiss the claims as misunderstandings and legitimate payments for consulting services. Fake invoices were produced, attempting to justify the transfers. But we had Ruth's records and Robert's own communications. Each piece of evidence dismantled their narrative, leaving them scrambling to maintain composure. Daniel sat rigid, his eyes fixed on me. I could see the storm inside him, the child who once clung to my side, the teenager who hid his insecurities in silence, now trying to reconcile the father he revered with the reality he had ignored. I took the stand, my voice steady but firm. I spoke of 40 years of marriage, the sacrifices I made for Robert and Daniel, the nights spent balancing accounts, the quiet moments of care, and the heartbreak of realizing that all those years had been overshadowed by secrecy. I shared the evidence, the photographs, the documents that revealed the truth. Every word was a testament to my resilience. The room fell silent as I concluded my testimony. Linda's facade faltered for the first time, her confident composure cracked. The courtroom murmurs reflected the shock and empathy of those who witnessed a lifetime of betrayal finally brought to light. Outside the courtroom, Daniel confronted me. His voice was low, hesitant. "Mom, why did you do this? Aren't you destroying his memory?" I looked at him, meeting his eyes. "Daniel, the memory you cling to was an illusion. He betrayed me, your family, and the life we built. I am not destroying memory, I am revealing the truth." This is justice. For the first time, I saw the conflict in his expression soften. The boy who once needed my guidance was now facing the complexities of human choices, morality, and loyalty. Slowly, he began to understand that truth is sometimes harsher than love itself. Days turned into weeks, and the court proceedings intensified. Each session revealed more layers of Robert's hidden life and the lengths Linda had gone to secure her position. With each revelation, I felt a mixture of pain, anger, and determination. But beneath it all, I felt a growing strength of realization that I was no longer a passive participant in my own life. Through meticulous planning, Ruth's assistance, and Michelle's expertise, we continued to build an irrefutable case. Every day, I felt more empowered. I was reclaiming not just assets, but my identity, my dignity, and the recognition that had been denied to me for decades. And though Daniel still struggled to reconcile the truth with his loyalty, I knew that this was only the beginning of the journey toward justice self-discovery, and the ultimate revelation of hidden lives that had long operated in the shadows. The courtroom was packed, the tension palpable. Everyone seemed to hold their breath as the judge reviewed the final arguments. Linda Mallister sat with a poised, confident smile, her fingers delicately interlaced. Daniel's eyes were fixed on me, unreadable yet full of emotion I couldn't yet name. Michelle Robinson, my lawyer, concluded her closing statement with unwavering clarity. She summarized the years of evidence, the systematic manipulation, and the hidden transactions that proved the betrayal. "This is not just about wealth," she said. "It is about justice, accountability, and recognition of truth." The judge paused, adjusting her glasses. "I have considered all evidence presented, testimonies, and legal arguments," she began. The room was silent, every heartbeat loud in my ears. "It is clear that the defendant received funds under false pretenses and with undue influence. The assets acquired by Ms. Linda Mallister shall be returned to the rightful heir, and all compensation due shall be restored to Ms. Emma Smith." A wave of relief and triumph surged through me. After years of silence, denial, and betrayal, justice had finally been served. Linda's eyes widened, her smile faltering for the first time. She looked around, realizing that the courtroom, once her stage, was now witnessing her defeat. Daniel stood slowly, his face conflicted. I approached him gently. "Daniel," I said softly, "I did this for our family, for the truth, and for the life we deserve." He looked at me, the years of misunderstanding and loyalty to deception now clashing with reality. For the first time, I saw the boy he had once been, the child who had held my hand through asthma attacks, the teenager whose heart I had protected. "Mom," he whispered, voice cracking, I didn't know." I embraced him, feeling the warmth of forgiveness and understanding slowly return. "It's okay," I murmured. "Now you see, now we can rebuild." In the days that followed, I meticulously reclaimed my home, my finances, and my sense of self. The legal victory was more than restitution, it was empowerment. A reclaiming of the dignity and identity that had been stripped away. I realized that the betrayal had been a catalyst, forcing me to confront the shadows of my life, to embrace my strength, and to assert my worth. Daniel began to understand his father's complexity, the charm, the deception, the choices that had shaped our lives. Slowly, he rebuilt his relationship with me, learning that loyalty and love are not blind, but must coexist with truth. And as I looked out from the porch of our restored home, the sun casting golden light over the garden, I knew that the journey was far from over, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming everything that truly mattered: self-respect, family, and the courage to face the future with clarity and strength. The sun rose softly over the quiet town, illuminating the garden that had once been filled with laughter, now echoing the memory of betrayal. I stepped out, feeling the cool breeze brush against my face after months of legal battles, emotional turmoil, and nights spent questioning every choice. I had finally reclaimed my life. The courtroom victory was only the beginning. I had my home, my finances, and most importantly, my dignity. But reclaiming self-worth meant more than material possessions. It meant embracing my own voice, my own decisions, and my own identity. Daniel came to visit, hesitant at first, carrying the weight of years spent defending illusions. "Mom, I understand now," he said quietly. I didn't see the sacrifices you made, or the truth hiding in plain sight. I was wrong. I took his hand, feeling the bond between mother and son strengthen once again. It's never too late to rebuild, I whispered. Life doesn't erase the past, but it gives us the chance to grow beyond it. Days passed, and I found joy in small things again, cooking with passion, walking in the garden, listening to the music that once played softly in the background of our home. Each day reminded me that I had survived, I had fought, and I had won not just in court, but in life. Linda Mallister's shadow had been erased. She had lost the wealth, the properties, and the influence she had wrongly claimed. And Daniel, once blinded by loyalty to a false image of his father, began to embrace the reality of what it meant to be honest, courageous, and resilient. That evening, I sat on the porch, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sunset over the maple tree I had planted years ago. The past was a teacher, not a prison. I realized that the music of my life, the rhythm, the choices, the dance was now entirely mine. I lit a candle for the life I had lost and for the strength I had found for the first time. I felt free from deception, free from silence, and free to embrace every moment as my own. To everyone watching, remember, life is full of hidden truths, betrayals, and challenges, but your courage, self-respect, and determination can turn any dark chapter into a story of triumph.